Welcome. Let's begin with a very interesting topic, and that is improvements in food resources. Now, we have some of the brain teasers as always. If you are able to solve those, you are all set with the lecture. If not, let's move forward. So, if we begin with a very basic understanding of a finite land, what do we mean by finite land? It implies that the land that is available for cultivation is limited. On the other hand, what is happening this side is we are adding up population. So all that population that is being added up is being added to the same parcel of the land. So in order to feed all those people, what is required? Firstly, we need to improve the agriculture. So either there should be enhancement in the production that is there. So in case we are producing, for example, 1 ton, we might have to switch to 5 ton, 10 ton. So that's in terms of production. The another idea is increasing the efficiency. That implies that in a season, if we are taking 2 crops in a year, we can switch to 3 crops or 4 crops in a year. So what we are doing with the same parcel of land is we are trying to increase the output. And that's very important because we have a huge population pressure on the same parcel of the land or the agricultural land that we have. Now, whatever food resources we have, they are used for carbohydrates. They can be used as proteins, vitamins, fats, minerals. So, all of these food items that we imply have their own importance. Two basic activities which are associated to improvement into the food resources is one dealing with agriculture and the second dealing with animal husbandry. So we will be covering each of those one by one. The first would be agriculture, the second would be animal husbandry. Under agriculture, we would understand three basic ideas. One is the improvement of the crop variety. The second is the production. The third is the protection of the crop. So we would be covering this agriculture under three basic heads, and then we would move on to animal husbandry. On this agriculture, as we said, since we have a finite land, we need to have an intensive farming, and as a result, we can increase the efficiency. This increased efficiency would help in the overall production or the overall output that would be generated. In line with this, we had numerous revolutions that have come place. M.S. Swaminathan was one who led the Green Revolution in India. Verghese Kurian was one who led the White Revolution. So White Revolution is associated with dairy and milk. Green Revolution is associated with food grains. Green Revolution came in two phases, phase 1 and phase 2. Phase 1 was the phase where you had a significant increase in the production of wheat crop that was seen, and slowly and gradually under phase 2 we were trying to see the implications of the high yielding variety seeds, HYV seeds that we were using, and we were also trying to see the impact of the fertilizers that was created on the soil. So we would be understanding fertilizers vis-a-vis manure in a while in this lecture again. The next important thing that we need to keep in mind is food security. Let's say today I produce 1,000 tons of food grains, but if it is kept in a storage and it all vanishes off, or it's infected by a rodent or a pest, then it's useless. So what we need to understand is there should be proper availability of the food, as well as the available food should be accessible. So those are the two priorities that we focus under food security. With this aim, we have something for the farmers. For the farmers, we constantly aim for increasing the income, bringing in better research and technology, better development opportunities, better technological advancements. It could be in the terms of scientific management, it could be in the form of the cropping patterns, giving them prior information about the weather. So weather forecasting, weather predictions are again very, very important. So all this requires a significant improvement and leads to a significant change in the crop yield that is seen. Now, what are the factors that affect the crop yield? First is the amount of sunlight that is there. The second is the temperature. The third is the amount of humidity. Each crop varies. Some of them require less humidity, others require higher amount of humidity. Some go well in a kind of arid soil, the other crops go well in a moist soil. Again, with significant global climatic changes that are coming up, some crops are more resilient, but on the other hand, you have crops, let's say like paddy, which are very sensitive to minor changes in the temperature. So even if the temperature limits changes by 1 degree Celsius, 2 degrees Celsius, those crops would be severely affected. So they have to be very resilient in that case. And we also have seasons for growing the crops, specifically in India, and this goes by different names in different countries. So in India, during the monsoon months, you have Kharif crop that grows, that you put in the seeds or sow the seeds during the month of June, harvest by October. And the common crops here are paddy, you have soybean, maize, cotton. So those are the common Kharif crops. If we go on to the Rabi crops, you have the sowing month, which is November, and harvesting month, that is towards April. And wheat, gram, peas, mustard, those are some of the common crops that are harvested as a Rabi crop. Over the years, over the past 50 years or 5 decades, we could say, we have seen a significant increase in the food production, that is nearly 4 times, with just addition of 25% more land. Now definitely the land is limited. Land is a scarce commodity, that we understand. Now with this scarce land, what we can do is we can shift the wasteland areas, we can shift the barren areas to cultivated areas, we can analyze the soil health and bring in changes analyzing the soil health, and therefore the proportion of the area or the land that could be added would remain low in contrast to the population. So definitely there would be a requirement to bring in better growth or better crops in terms of the production, the quantity and the efficiency. We also are focusing on scientific advancements in terms of genetic modified crops. So genetically modified crops, a very good example is BT cotton in India. BT cotton in India is resistant to infection and is insect resistant, and therefore is more resilient crop than the other crops. So as mentioned, we would be classifying this agriculture under 3 heads. The first is the crop variety. How can we improve the variety of the crop? How can we improve the production? And then once the production is done, how can we protect the crop? So protection and management of the crop is third important aspect. So let's move one by one. The first improvement. Crop variety can be improved by bringing in good yield. This could be in the terms of high yielding variety seeds. So what we do is we select good breeds. Now good breeds in terms of resistance to the disease that is there. It could be good response to the fertilizers and the manures, more production, higher efficiency crops and higher yielding crops. So those are some of the good yield crops that we say. Then we are talking about hybridization. That means you are crossing between 2 dissimilar plants. So let's say you have plant A and B. A is more disease resistant, so I'll take that gene from A. However, B has a characteristic of early growing or is good in response to the photoperiodism, good in presence of sunlight. So I'll take that gene, and the new crop C that comes in would have the characteristics of both the crops. Now when this crop is again crossed with another crop, this crop would be further better. So with a genetical modifications, we could say, or hybridization, we are producing new varieties which are having better yield, are more potent and good. So we are trying to introduce new genes into the system, improve in quality. Now what kind of quality can be improved? Let's say you have a crop which is good with protein, soybean. So my idea would be to improve the quality of protein in soybean. So more higher content of protein with the soybean crop. Similarly, if it's a wheat crop, we can go for baking quality. If it is oil seeds, we can go for the content of oil, the quantity of oil that could be extracted from that oil seed. Similarly, if it's fruits, if it's vegetable, the shelf life is less. So the idea could be increasing the shelf life of the crop. Each of those have their unique characteristics, and based on that we have to identify which crop we can proceed in which fashion. Again, we have three similar terms for you here, so be very careful. It is intervarietal. Intervarietal means between different varieties, if you are crossing, we say it's intervarietal. Then I say it's interspecific. Interspecific means they are between the different species of the same genus. So the genus remains the same, the species differ. Okay. The last is intergeneric. Intergeneric means the genus itself is different. So you have two with different genus that is there. Again, we are talking about crops that could be resistant to pest infections and infestations, and they could also be resistant to abiotic changes. For example, severe weather climatic conditions, drought that is coming in, waterlogging that is happening, a cold period or a heat period that is there. Maturity. So changes in the maturity. We would like the crop to be harvested within shorter duration, and the loss during the harvest should be also reduced. So that's again idea that we think about. The next is wider adaptability. So it should be adapted to different environmental conditions. It should be resilient in different environments, and having a agronomic characteristic. What we want, if we want the crop to be tall, it should be tall. If we want more fruits, there should be more fruits. So desirable agronomic characteristics that we want should be produced, and that's where we are trying to improve the crop variety. The next important one is crop management, the production. When I say production, the farm size, as I said, is limited. So if it is a small farm, you would have to work on the tools that could be used in a small farm. If it's a big farm, definitely you can introduce a tractor there. Then the relation between the inputs and the yields should be balanced. It should be well maintained. The cropping systems, the cropping practices should be well defined, and we include three headings under crop management. The production aspect. First is understanding the nutritional management. The second is understanding the irrigation. And the third is understanding the cropping patterns. Okay, so what we have is three different ideas that we try to understand: the nutritional management, the irrigation, and the cropping pattern. Let's proceed one by one. The nutritional management. Nutritional management, we have 16 nutrients that are required for a crop or a plant, of which 2 are available from air, 2 from water, and remaining 13 from the soil. The 2 has common elements. So air has carbon and oxygen, water has hydrogen and oxygen. So oxygen gets common in these. Now air and water, we have 3 things that we get. Remaining all elements we get from soil. From the soil we have 13 elements that are obtained, 13 nutrients that are obtained. 6 are called as macronutrients, remaining 7 as micronutrients. So macronutrients are the NPK fertilizers that we talk about, the nitrogen, potassium, and phosphorus, followed by calcium, magnesium, and sulfur. The micronutrients are iron, manganese, boron, zinc, copper, molybdenum, and chlorine. So these are the nutrients that we have. Then we focus on manures and fertilizers. Now if we look onto a graph that is plotted here, over the time what happens is, for a long run we say manure is good, but fertilizer is good for a shorter term. You have higher yield, but the soil quality degrades. The soil is affected, and therefore in longer run fertilizers have a negative impact. And that's what happened in the Green Revolution phase 1 that we had mainly in the regions of Punjab and Haryana, and there was significant deterioration in the soil quality that was witnessed during that time. So manure is organic. It is from the decomposition of animal excreta, and it increases the soil fertility. You have biological waste that is generated. So this manure is of two kinds that we talk about. First is the compost and the second is the green manure. Compost can be from the farm, from the livestock excreta, it could be from the vegetable waste that is put up. And green manure is you soak the seeds, the leaves, the peels of the fruits and the vegetables, and this soaked material enriches the soil with nitrogen and phosphorus compound, and this is good for a long term. As we said, fertilizers are synthetic. We are also talking about the proper dosage, the usage of fertilizers. They definitely lead into water and create eutrophication in the water environment, as we have seen in the other lectures. So those are affecting the water as well as the soil negatively. So what we are giving a thrust now is organic fertilizers, organic manures that we focus on. And then we also have biofertilizers. Biofertilizers are living things that can fix or that can act as fertilizer. For example, blue-green algae. Blue-green algae fix the nitrogen in the paddy fields or the rice fields, and therefore it is called as a biofertilizer because this is being done by a living organism. Okay, so that is one of the important aspects under nutritional management. The next is irrigation. Now, irrigation can occur through various ways. Firstly, India being a monsoon land, we are highly dependent on monsoon. Poor monsoon implies crop failure. So what we need to have is a backup plan. This backup plan could be in the form of creating wells. It could be in the form of rainwater harvesting. It could be watershed management. It could be forming canals, tanks, or any other means of proper irrigation facility that could be there. So if it is a condition of droughts, irregular distribution of rainfall that is seen, irrigation is dependent on means. So wells, if we classify, it could be tube wells which go deeper in a strata. It could be dug wells which are over the surface areas. Then canals are the channels which go far and off from the main river. So from the main river you have canals that could go to the very interior of the villages and provide water supply into those areas. You also have the river lift systems where inadequate water release is done and water is directly used for the purpose of irrigation. Tanks are small storage centers that are used for smaller catchment areas. Rainwater, when during the monsoon, once you have adequate rainfall, you accumulate that water which could be used in the months where you do not have ample rainfall. And then we are also trying to build in check dams. Check dams, the main idea is to stop the flow of water and reduce the soil erosion into the system. So those are some of the important aspects under irrigation. The third interesting thing that we would understand under crop production is cropping pattern. Under the cropping pattern, we have mixed cropping, intercropping, and crop rotation. Mixed cropping means you have two or more crops that are grown together on the same land. So it could be wheat and gram together, groundnut and sunflower together. And the idea is if one crop fails, you are insured because you have another crop at hand. So the farmers are not running a risk. So that is the main idea behind mixed cropping. The next is intercropping. That means on the same parcel of the land, you are planting in series. So you have alternate one crop, second crop, and so on. So it could be soya bean, maize, or finger millet along with cowpea. So those are some of the combinations that go well. The idea is twofold. One is to reduce the impact of diseases onto the crop. The second is to increase the nutritional value. So if I am growing soya bean with maize, the nutrients could be exchanged across the crops in terms the soil would be equally beneficial for both the crops in long run. The next is crop rotation. That means I am having a pre-plant succession. So let's say at first I'll grow groundnut and then I'll grow wheat and then again groundnut and wheat. So what we are trying to do is we are trying to have a pre-plant succession of the kind of crops that would be grown. The moisture and the irrigation requirements for each of the crops would be well met. Now coming on to the third important criteria under improvement of agriculture, and that was the protection. Be it any living organism, it is susceptible to disease as we human beings. So similarly are the crops, they are susceptible to diseases. They are susceptible to infestation. There would be unwanted growth of the plants that would take place, which is known as weeds. So you'll have to remove those weeds. That would be known as the use of weedicides. So wherever you use the word sides, you are trying to kill. Weedicides are used to kill the weeds, pesticides are used to kill the pest. And then you have similarly the fungicides and so on. So what we are trying to do is we are trying to use the appropriate kind of pesticide, and this whole term of pesticide includes insecticides, fungicides, herbicides and so on. Weeds, which are unwanted plants that grow with the main crop. Some of the common examples of weeds are mentioned here, but the thing is they fight, they compete for light, they compete for space, they compete for the food that is there, and in a form of competition that is created, the original crop that is ought to grow there is reduced. So weeds need to be removed. Similarly, once you have a good crop, there are storage issues. So storage loss is another important thing that we focus on. If it could be due to poor temperature, higher humidity that could be seen, loss of the weight during the time of storage, germination, discoloration of the product. So a very strict requirement is threefold: cleaning, fumigation and drying of the seeds in a proper fashion is required. Then we also have certain preventive methods. Now preventive methods, what does it imply? It could be where you are intercropping, you are having crop rotation or a proper seed bed preparation that is there, and that would help you to control the weeds and prevent the spread of the weeds. The next idea under improvement of food resources is animal husbandry. So under animal husbandry, the idea is we focus on the scientific management of the livestock. Now we have the livestock census which is conducted. We are also talking about RFIDs of all the animals and the cattle that are there. So threefold objective again here. We focus on feeding the animals, breeding of the animals and controlling the disease or the infestation for any of the animals. So as the population has increased, the living standards are going up, the demand is going up. So again, same thing goes for animal husbandry. You have higher demand. Under animal husbandry, we would be focusing on four major aspects. One is the cattle farming, the next is poultry, the next is beekeeping and fishery. So let's understand those one by one. The first is cattle farming. Now cattle farming is usually done for twofold objective. One is for milk, the other is as a draught animal which could be used for irrigation, carting or tilling purposes. Now the milch animals, which are also known as the lactating animals or the milk producing animals, are mainly the females, and there are cross breeds that are seen. So exotic breeds, which are the foreign breeds, are crossed with the Indian breeds, and this cross improves the lactation amount, and then you also have a higher resistance to disease that could be seen. We have a list of the foreign breeds and the Indian breeds that are there, which is important for you to remember and memorize. Again, the idea is provide a disease resistant cattle that could be seen. They should be fed at regular intervals. They should be given proper vaccinations. Flukes are the organisms that damage the liver of the cattle, and worms affect the intestine and the stomach. So that is again to be checked at regular intervals. For the food requirements, we are focusing on maintenance requirements and also the milk requirements. Then what kind of feed should be given to the animals? There is two focus on that. One is the roughage, which is mainly the fiber content that is given. The next is concentrate, and concentrate is one which has very high levels of protein and nutrients that is there. So fiber crop along with concentrate crop is the main feed that is given to the animals. Indian cattle could be classified as cows and buffaloes mainly. So you have Bos indicus and Bos bubalis, which is the major categories of the cattle that are seen in India. The next comes is poultry. Poultry is mainly used either for egg or for meat. So you have broiler chickens. They are fed with rich vitamin supplements. The idea is to have a good growth rate and better feed efficiency. Similarly, we are trying to maintain the temperature and the hygiene conditions. the daily requirement of the foods is also to be maintained. We need to have protein rich diet that is there, higher levels of vitamin A and K, and check the nutritional deficiency in the poultries, if any, prevent any kind of infectious disease that are there. Now for the cross breeding, again you have the exotic breeds as well as the Indian breeds that are there. The idea is again to bring in better quality of chicks, higher number of chicks, low maintenance that is required, better adaptability in the Indian weather scenario, reduction in the size of the egg laying birds, so that more fiber could be used and there could be cheaper diets that could be given, for a simple way to be explained. The next is fish production. Now fish production is mainly an important source on the coastal areas because it is a source of cheap animal protein that is seen. So the cheaper form of animal protein can be seen here. Now this fishery could be in two ways. It could be either natural source, so we call it capture fishing. The other could be culture fishing, where you are fish farming. Again, it could be marine, which is deep into the waters. Pomfret, mackerel, tuna are some of the examples of marine shipping, marine fishery. And then you have the brackish water. Brackish water is a region where sea water and fresh water mix, mainly in the areas of estuaries, lagoons. And most of the fishery that is done is based on the economic output. So let's say from the oysters you have pearls. So it's an economic value for the marine fish that is seen. A very interesting form is a composite fish culture. Composite fish culture is a very unique idea. You have fish and the paddy that grows together. You have the local as well as the imported species that are there, and here you have 5 to 6 species of the fish that survive in a single fish pond. Now they do not compete because let's say the cattlers that are used, the fishes that are there are surface feeders, so they'll remain on the surface. You have rohus which moves on the middle zone. You have mrigals and common crabs that move on the bottom. Similarly, you have grass crabs that feed only on the weeds, and they all do not compete for one another. So that's one of the very interesting ideas under composite fish culture, a very important idea. Again, most of the breeding for the fishes occurs during the monsoon month. But what happens is, if we want to have it during the off season, you need to have the fish seed that is to be collected. So fish seeds which are collected in the wild are mixed with other species, and you can have the crossbreed that could be done, and also off-season breeding would also be possible. But there is a major demerit when we are talking about a culture fishery or fish farming. One is, we would focus on only those fishes which are either having economic value or those which are beneficial to mankind. So in that process, we would disrupt the normal biodiversity, and this would be a threat to the normal biodiversity that would be seen. Hormonal stimulations could be brought into picture, and sometimes there could be changes in the gene aspect that could be seen. So those are some of the issues that we focus on. The last important aspect under animal husbandry is beekeeping. Now beekeeping is a source of additional income for the farmers. It requires very low investment. You have honey production that takes place. Now local varieties are crossed with commercial bee varieties which are mainly coming from Italy, and these Italian bees are unique in themselves because they stay in the beehives for a longer period of time. They can be bred well with the Indian varieties and they sting less. So it's better for one who is doing the job of apiary. So you have the Italian bees which are usually crossed with the Indian breeds for commercial honey production that is done. Now quality of honey, on what factors it would depend? Firstly, the flowers which are available for nectar, the amount of pollen collection that is there, the pasteurization that is done through. So those all are the factors that determine the quality of honey. And based on the honey, we have a new revolution which is known as sweet revolution. Similar to that, for the fishery, we have blue revolution that is important. So those are some of the major highlights of this topic. We will be covering many more important topics in science in the upcoming lectures. Stay tuned. Have a wonderful evening.